powerful?
Yes.
Oh my.
Well, how many of you are members of the Eastlake Historical Society? Is that what we call it, isn't it? What do we call this organization?
Eastlake Community Council?
Speak it up. Eastlake Community Council.
Yeah.
How many of you are members?
How many of you live in Eastlake?
I'm not sure you
Okay, everyone else go home.
Well, so you're basically the foundation of the organization.
Are you going to introduce it? Why?
I think this is the 4th year that I've done something for this group. The first year was a funny one because we spontaneously started an effort to recruit people and have them give money that night to the organization. And they made a lot of money. We got away with it. You made money that night, didn't you?
We always do. You sometimes would just take your cap out and start passing it around.
Well, we'll do that later today. Okay.
We learned that. It must be your Lutheran ministerial
Lutheran,
background.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Martin Luther. You're signaling for Martin or for me?
Oh,
Oh, goodness. Martin and I don't agree about much anymore, though, so sorry. What, are you ready to go, Gene?
I'm ready.
Gene's going to lead the night.
Are we ready to go? Shall we begin? Well, this is the cover of the new book, and just to give you a quick rundown of what we're going to see tonight, we're going to wander through a number of the comparisons, tell a few stories, and then right smack dab in the middle, well, about 2/3 of the way through the book, we will pause and look through some materials about Eastlake, since that's where we are. So you'll get a preview of the book if you haven't seen it already, and you will get maybe 9 or 10 comparisons and slides about Eastlake, and then we'll go back to the book.
Can't we just go to Eastlake first? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's right.
You gotta keep us here, you don't wanna.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Once you see Eastlake, that's it. Who cares about anything else? So
what's that game we used to play in church youth groups, where you'd have to walk around a table and there wouldn't be enough chairs for everybody, and the music would play. Remember that?
Yeah. It's not just church youth groups. It's musical chairs.
Oh, I thought it was religious. That's funny. So,
No, it's only religious if you believe in hell.
you're escaping hell then, as you
Yeah,
rush to your chair.
you're the last one to get into heaven, I guess, or
Yeah.
something like that. You've been chosen.
Well, we could do it right here. You see these chairs and all these tables?
We could indeed.
I'll whistle. All right, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Gene's going to get unpleased by my behavior if I don't shut up for a while.
No, I'm happy with your behavior. And here's what we're gonna do. Usually we have again a little Eastlake section, which means that we've gotten rid of the first 12, 13 minutes, which are a biography of Paul.
Good.
But there's one element in this biography which I have to show you. It's right at the end, so I'm going to back up, and it's a little video. And I want you to pay attention. Paul and I went to visit our collaborator and friend Bérengère Lamont in Paris. And in 2005, we found something that was rather unique. And you'll see precious and unique, that's right. And so as we go, I'm going to close your eyes just for a second because I have to go back and then close your eyes. There we go. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, here it begins.
Open your eyes.
You can open them. Let's see.
Oh, that's exciting. He looks very much like me, doesn't he? He does. Put the glasses, put the glasses. Here we go. Take this with me. Okay.
Role model.
So Berenger sends him back and says, I got to get a picture of this. So she pulls out her camera, and Paul goes back and sits down. Watch for the glance as both are aware suddenly that this is happening. So,
Are you sure the right one came back?
we don't know for sure. Paul had changed ever since 2005.
The guy can speak Greek.
So here he is. Here they are together, side by side. How often do you meet your doppelganger? It's pretty rare. Paul found him once in Paris, and several years later, Berenger went back and found this guy, and he is actually a Romanian Orthodox priest in central Paris, and this is from 2012, 2013. So that's as much of Paul's biography. We'll go forward from here to the book. But I just had, I marvel at that video. It's you know, either could stand in for the other. So I was thinking.
See it again?
No, I don't want to see it. But I was thinking you could actually go into the Romanian Orthodox Church, and you know, if you didn't say anything, you could probably conduct the better part of the service.
In Paris.
In Paris.
I'm sorry, but the PA system is bad today.
Bring your
No,
microphone.
I'm sorry. No. Let's go ahead with the show.
All
The
right.
big shoe.
So,
You want to introduce the videographer?
this is Clay Eels, who has been taking a video of 23 events so far. This is our 24th and our first after the holidays. So, thank you for coming. We've had an interesting time with this book. It was supposed to arrive before Paul's birthday, which was October 28th of this year. And it didn't really hit the bookstores until the beginning of September. So
Not September.
December, you're right, thank you. So, beginning of December, I mean, we had a good 3.5 weeks of sales. We pre-sold a bunch, but it was, we're in the thick of a little trade war with China, so it put a little delay in the port of Shenzhen, about a 5-week delay. So, as many of you know, Paul's been doing this column since 1982, and we are now just coming up on the 37th year anniversary. And we counted them up, and there's more than 1,800 columns. We are slowly but surely assembling all of those columns, which exist in no other place in their entirety, and putting them up on our blog, which is pauldorpat.com. The very first column that Paul did for the Times was the one that I'll show you the pictures of the then and the now for. The then, this is 1919, the return of the 63rd Coastal Artillery from the First World War. And this is at 4th and Pike, so Westlake. And my job as we assembled the book was to go out and find something that was compatible, commensurate, of similar import. And so I went out.
That he had to wait because his job also was now and then, which was repeating the place, you see. So he sometimes had to go back several times until he was happy with the subject that had accumulated or had somehow showed itself at the same place or nearly the same place, yeah.
So what I found, and I actually did go back to this spot 2 or 3 times, and then I realized on January 21st, 2017, there was a major event going through downtown Seattle, and here it is. This is the largest march, reputedly, in Seattle history. And it's the Women's March, of course. So here we go, back to Paul's original. Yeah.
It will be popular if we ask the women how many of them went to the march.
Go ahead.
How many of the women went to the march? 1, 2, 3, practically all the women here went to the march. And some of the men too, I bet, right?
You've got a microphone, Mr.
I'd like to use yours. Some of the men go to the march? Any of you? Will you stay home and smoke cigarettes? Okay.
So here's the first picture that Paul took for the column, which was January 17th, 82. And it's in the fall, and he's got a barista holding the photograph right there in the corner at 4th and Pine.
I knew her name then. I mean, we introduced each other, but I don't remember her name anymore. And how long ago that is? 37 years.
Right? Almost exactly. That's right. Wow.
I think I'll take a nap.
So we assembled the book and created the pages consecutively based on the order they originally appeared in the column. Arbitrary, but it seems, so the very first now and then in the book is this one, which is also Paul's very, very first now and then in the Times. So as we go forward, we will wander non-consecutively through the book and tell a few stories.
Now, let me interrupt once. You should know that Gene started doing the nows about 12 years ago when we were working on the book Washington State. Then and now or now and then?
Then and now.
Then and now. So that's how we got working together, although we'd worked together many times on other things before that. Okay.
This is early in the book, and this is the deepest snow in Seattle history. And it's 1880. And only the day before this snow fell, the Elisha Ferry, the governor of Ferry's State of the Union region report appeared in the Intelligencer. And it stated that what was notable about our area was that there was very, very little inclement weather. The snow never fell, that it was a delightful and wonderful temperate zone. And the next day, after that report appeared, January 4th, the snow began to fall. And it fell for 8 days and 64 inches.
It's biblical, I tell you, it's biblical. Right, okay, that's enough.
Will you tell us about these buildings, Paul?
Oh, the building on the right is Yesler's Hall, and that's where they met to dance and meet for all sorts of group activities, including, did I mention dance? Yeah. Well, that was it. That's where you had group things and some churches and some trials and things like that. And the building behind it is the sheriff's home at 2nd Avenue, the southeast corner of 2nd, and this street, which is, how do you know that Jesus Christ made Seattle under protest? You heard that? How many of you heard that? I better ask the other thing. How many of you have not heard it? Well, you all know that, well, practically. So it's Jesus is James, Christ is Columbia, and before that, no, Cherry and Columbia. Okay, Jesus Christ. Maid is Marion and Maine, Madison, Seattle. I can't remember what that is. Spring and Seneca. Under University
Union and University. Yeah.
Protest.
Pike and Pine.
Right.
What was the rationale for the people who came up with this scheme? They probably weren't thinking about Jesus.
No, they were thinking about Julius Caesar, but they didn't use Julius Caesar because it was a Christian community. Although there were a couple of Stoics among them. So,
Well,
the Christians won.
The Lutherans won.
I don't think there were any Lutherans.
No, but there were Baptists. This is the Baptist
They were
church.
Methodists.
First Baptist up on the hill.
Yeah, that's the Baptist church at 4th, up at 4th and Cherry.
What's
street is this?
This is First and
Cherry,
Cherry.
that's Cherry.
And I went back trying my best to find a snowfall that would accommodate the 64 inches.
This is real, shows real valor and persistence, and ultimately he got his reward.
Here we go. And in my defense, this was the deepest snow we've had in the last 2.5 years, and look at that. There's a little pile on the fire, and on the car over here, and on his head. But aside from that, this was about it. So, but here we are, First and Cherry, same spot.
It's an awfully big flake there.
It is a huge, it was a very flaky early morning snow. Here we are down on the waterfront. The photographer had his back to Pike, and he's looking across the waterfront. And now we've lost a lot on the waterfront, and we're about to lose something else.
Hey, should we turn the lights down a little, or is it okay?
Can everyone see? Do you want the lights down?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit?
We're not going to confiscate your notes.
The photographer here is Anders Vilse, who spent less than a decade in Seattle taking pictures, and then moved back to Norway at the urgings of his wife, and became the Norwegian national photographer and a treasure in Norway. But while he was here, he did a whole series of lovely photographs, including this one looking at the waterfront in the late 90s. And today, that spot is right about here. So,
And those are Gene's dancing, happy dancing students from Hillside Elementary School, where he teaches.
well, it's Hillside Middle and High School. So these are the middle schoolers, and I take them off on history tours. Besides teaching drama there, and we have to go to the market at least a couple times a year down on the waterfront.
He's training them to do the work for him.
Yeah.
They wanted you to go back to the original Fremont.
I see the top of the Smith Tower. in the
What did you
corner.
say?
No Smith Tower. What you see up here, if that's what
No, it's too early.
over here.
No, in the later picture I caught.
Oh yeah, the Smith Tower is in the later picture,
Wow, this is early.
so you can
You
see.
like that? Look at the Smith Tower in the earlier picture.
Well,
You like
Too
it?
early, yeah,
Yeah.
way too early.
And
Why do you
so,
like it? Tell us what's
The tower?
enriching. Yeah.
Oh,
In the picture that you see, why do you like it?
I just caught my eye, because I've never been in it.
Yeah.
My dad used to work next to the Seattle Tower, and I
Oh.
know that one just like the back of my hand, but I've never been in Smith Tower my whole life.
there's a really cool apartment up in the.
I read about it, yeah, I've seen it, I mean, it just kills me. I
The
mean, I
very
just
top.
did the Viaduct Drive and video, and I'm like, there's a Smith
Yeah.
Tower, blah, blah, blah. Anyway,
Well, I'm sure
I gotta
they'll,
get in very soon. I wanna go see
yeah, okay.
it. How I have.
And do they still have elevator people? in this?
Yeah,
They do, and they have operators too, and now you have to pay.
yeah, that's right.
They charge, I think it's about $15 a head to get up to the top of the Smith Tower.
I think
I
there's
went
one.
up there, I went up there one spring, the first warm day of spring in about 1973 or so, with another artist, Fred Bauer. He had his camera with him, and on the way up we ran into a couple of other friends, artists, and we got up there and we said, there's nobody here, we have to take the umbrella, you have to take the lift yourself. So we know if the lift is coming, we could hear it, and it wasn't coming. In fact, we hadn't sent it down. So we took our clothes off and did a nude quartet, what would you call it, display, exposure on the top of the, now that's not, you're the security guy, right? You wouldn't have allowed that, I'm telling you. It's a good thing you weren't around. But I can show you the picture, of course.
So here we are a little bit further south on the waterfront, closer to the Smith Tower where Paul exposed himself. And
Not much to expose, dear, so.
so here, this is right in the heart of the Yukon fever. And in this 6-month period in the late 1898, early 1899, about 100 boats left Seattle Harbor and headed up to the Yukon. You can see this wonderful sign where anyone headed for the Yukon can buy a portable aluminum house, weight 150 pounds. And they're all facing north.
Why is that?
I think they're all just thinking about heading for gold.
I don't know why they should all look that direction, but maybe there is an inclination to look in that direction when you have an irrational need to go to Alaska.
Well, here we are looking in the same spot, and you can see the Marion Street overpass. And there's going to be a handful of pages now in the book which will rapidly become obsolete as we tear down this viaduct.
Let's tear out the pages.
No, you'd make a supplement.
Well,
Now look at you, you stop that.
if we sell out our 5,000 copies that we brought down,
Yeah, we want to encourage you to buy several copies to help us pay for the book.
we're going to run
Remember
out
those relatives in
Peoria.
Peoria, Illinois? Where is your relatives? Where are they? What town in Illinois?
They're in Urbana.
Urbana. Well, they can afford it. Yeah. Okay.
They're furloughed now, Paul. No one can afford it.
Maybe we should send that book.
And here's, both of those old photos were by Andersville. And so for the next 30 plus years, he took these kind of magnificent photos of all over Norway, of village life and scenery, and pretty remarkable fellow. In 2015, they even released a set of stamps. Well, talking of the Smith Tower, in the year before it opened, a handful of photographers got up and took pictures, and this one was taken looking northerly, and it was the first view. This is before they'd even applied the exterior to the top of the tower. They hadn't put the skin on yet, so he was shooting through the girders. And you can see up north, you can see Lake Union for the first time from this location. And there's Queen Anne, and Queen Anne High School was in place. This is 1913. And here is St. James Cathedral. And the roof of St. James, and you can just barely make it out, it still has a dome. And it was only 3 years later, on February 2nd, that that dome would fall. Well, this is in the book. It's not going to be in tonight's show. But that dome collapsed under the second biggest snow in Seattle history. And it was never replaced.
It was the bishop's fault. So it really wasn't the bishop's fault.
I don't think so.
But he asked the press to keep it quiet, which amuses the priests to this day. They all laugh when that story is retold from one priest to another priest. Bishop O'Day asked the press to keep it quiet. Here, their dome had fallen to the chancel in the St. James, and he was trying to keep it quiet.
This was like at 10:30 in the morning, and narrowly missing by about 25 minutes a whole group of Catholic schoolgirls who had a service there that morning.
Yeah, lucky dears.
So down below, as we go to the modern slide, I want you to keep your eyes on the Rainier Club, which is right down there, and behind it, the Methodist Dome. So we're going forward now. Let's take a look at today's shot from Smith Tower. Well, there's no Lake Union. There's no Queen Anne High School. No Queen Anne to speak of. But there is, up on the hill, we still have St. James minus the dome, and there's the Rainier Club. This is 1931. In the middle of the year, the Monongahela, a four-master, is being towed out just before the cantilevered Aurora Bridge struts are
Towed out of Lake Union.
towed out of Lake Union. And it's about to be sold to a Vancouver logging company where it will become a logging barge. And within 3 or 4 years, after a good 50 years of wandering the world, it will be dismantled and and gotten rid of. But they got it out of Lake Union, one of those last 4 masters. Today,
No, I'm
Pretty
interrupting
close.
here. I'd like to say this is an example of Gene's picturesque, work. It is a lovely collection of things we all feel good about. The clouds and the water and the boats and all that. That's called picturesque. And this book is loaded with them. It's a wonderful representation of a kind of ideal Seattle. Okay.
Can you go back briefly?
You bet. What do you want to go back?
I just didn't see the flat part of the top of the arch. I didn't realize it was,
Oh, yeah.
the curvature changes to flat in the middle of it.
so this is 31. This is earlier, end of last year. And this is the Taft Telegraph Key, so named because it was given to President Taft in 1909 by the miner who actually had made the first claim and discovered gold in the Yukon, George Carhart. And he, out of his original gold nuggets, he made this key, mounted it on a slab of Alaskan marble, and gave it to President Taft. And Taft then used it in 1909 to signal across the country the opening of the AYP, the Alaska Yukon Pacific Festival, our first World's Fair. Now, it was also used for this event, February 22nd, 1932, 6-7 months after the Monongahela passed through. The Aurora Bridge was completed, and on February 22nd, it's actually the George Washington Memorial Bridge, and on February 22nd of that year, 200 years after the birth of George Washington, the bridge was opened. Now, the governor of the time, Roland Hartley, was a longtime opponent of federalism and statism, and he was a localist. And
Public Works, he didn't like Public Works.
Just didn't like highways, didn't like taxes, and was a bit of a blowhard. So when he got to this spot, and he's about to open the bridge, because they asked the governor to do it, even though he was a fierce opponent.
Ceremonial duty.
It was a ceremonial duty. So he got in front of the crowd. The bridge was empty. There were thousands on either side. And he began to deliver a long and vapid and self-congratulatory speech. And he got so wrapped up in his self-congratulation that he lost track of time. And before he could finish, Herbert Hoover pressed the Taft key. It was 2:57 in the afternoon, and the fireboats let off their streams, and the flags unfurled, and the crowds cheering streamed out onto the bridge, and Hartley never finished his speech. Here it is today. I don't know if he complained. I don't think anyone listened. They couldn't hear him complain. So there we are today. But here is Herbert Hoover at that moment pressing the Taft key.
Oh, it's a lovely story.
In the White House?
In the White House.
Yeah.
As far as I know, I can't swear that's the White House. If it is the White House, it's in the novels somewhere.
Gene, can you go back to the previous slide and tell them how you shot this?
Well, I use when there are trees in the way, when there's no longer a structure that allows for capturing and repeating an image accurately. I have a 21-foot long extension pole. So here, at one point, it was possible to stand on the very northeast edge of Queen Anne, above Aurora, and take this photo. And today, you just can't get anything from there because big trees are in the way. So I stand out on the street with my 21-foot high pole and get to the closest spot I can achieve.
Has anybody complained about it?
No, usually they walk by and say, boy, that's a big selfie stick.
How does it hold steady?
It's very heavy, and so I kind of launch it against my feet and hold it high, and then hope for, in a breeze, it can be a little bit, with 6 pounds of camera at the very top, it can be a little dicey. And then I have a remote control, so I take photos.
He's a big guy, strong guy. Works out every day on one of these things.
Yeah, rowing machine. Well, here, the Taft Key was used, and here it is in living color. It was used one more time to open the Seattle World's Fair in 1962 by John F. Kennedy. It's now in the Smithsonian. You can't see it, though, because the Smithsonian's closed. But Kennedy opened the fair. And in the book we have, this is one of my favorite columns about, occasionally in the column with Paul we feature individuals and their little moments from their lives. This is Paula Dahl at 6 years old, and she, a Seattleite, who arrived at the fair and was pronounced the 9 millionth visitor and given a sign to wear around her neck, a big dog, some VIP status, and here are her very happy parents and her very bitter sister. It was either 8,999,999 or 9,000,001. But they did spend the next day going up and down the bubblator and the needle, and the entire family were given free access. Well, this is Paula now, and she is an elementary school teacher in Issaquah. And on her wall, she has that 9 millionth sign, which she brags about and shows her kids. Seattle fire, we had to feature a couple of columns about the fire in the book. This is one of the rare photos.
Why did you say we had to do it?
Well, because I think, Paul wants to know why did we have to feature the Seattle fire. I think that's an obvious, do I have to answer that? It would be like not featuring the Smith Tower. It's a feature in history that we can't avoid, that we have to.
Well, it has but when you say had to, it gives it the sense it's a responsibility rather than a joy.
Oh, well, I take joy in the responsibility.
He's clever, this guy.
But this is a marvelous photo, and there aren't very many of them. And it's because most of the photographers were downtown rescuing their camera equipment, most likely, and photographs. Up here on Fry Opera House, there's one lone figure who's closest to the fire, and I guess doesn't feel threatened because he's so high above it. But all of these buildings and 30 blocks were burned down in Seattle. And here we are at the corner of First and Spring. Lots of brick and stone replaced those wooden structures. And another photo down in a very familiar location. So pay attention now to this structure here, because if you know Pioneer Square, you will have walked by it many times without knowing it.
About the location, you mean?
The location, yeah. The structure itself, unfortunately, has been replaced by this.
Get it? Get it? Yeah.
So here we are, Pioneer building, which was built shortly after the fire. And in the place of this particular structure, which is the prow of what?
Sunken ship.
The sinking ship garage. In the place of that structure, and let's look back now, this was the front, that little front piece of the Flatiron Occidental Hotel. And it was replaced eventually by the Seattle, or soon after, by a rebuilt hotel on that same spot called the Seattle Hotel. And then the Seattle Hotel was replaced by the sinking ship garage. But let's look at the Seattle Hotel in about 1908. Isn't that lovely? There's the Pioneer Building. And this was the hotel on the face of a building that launched a Seattle preservationist movement, which ended up providing us with a very wonderful silver lining. And we'll get there in just a second. But here it is today, the sinking ship garage in that same footprint. But before we get to that silver lining, Paul now is going to describe the sensitivities of a set of architects.
I thought we were going to sing the little birdie song. No? Okay. Oh yes, that's a good story too. Well, that sinking ship garage was described by the builders of it, that is the architects whose names have slipped into the past, as repeating some of the architectural detailing of the neighborhood. That was an answer to the objections of people like, well, like who, Gene?
Like Victor Steinbrook.
Right. That it was quite the opposite, that it was not endearing or lovely or any other fine quality. So what they did is they put basket handle shapes to the bars that were preventing people from jumping to the top in depression or complaint. And you can see the basket handle windows that are in the Merchants Cafe building. Yeah, so that they thought then was a significant adjustment of the architecture to improve it and to give it some sympathy with the old buildings in its neighborhood, its neighbors, yeah.
And I think it reveals a deep sensitivity on the part of the architects.
What year was the garage built?
60, 61.
60, so it's just.
So it was torn down,
Forever?
Seattle Hotel.
What's that?
It was an empty lot then for whatever year?
No, Seattle Hotel replaced the Occidental Hotel. So the Seattle Hotel was there until
The Occidental
60.
was the
Oh,
ruined
okay.
one.
The Occidental. So that was the protest. And the silver lining was that Victor Steinbrook and thousands of Seattleites were so upset at the loss of the Seattle Hotel, which we saw festooned in a couple of photos ago. They were so upset with that that when the market was threatened several years later, and we were going to tear down the Pike Place market and turn it into condos and parking garages and storefronts, that this group of citizens protested and won the day. And today, we still have our market.
We're very proud that Victor Steinbrook was a board member of the Eastlake Community Council,
Oh.
as well as his wife Marjorie.
And I was an actor in Seattle for a number of years, and Marjorie was a close friend. So I would go to their house in Eastlake. It's true. But here we are looking down on the farmers market, and of course at the far north end, it's the Victor Steinbrook Park. And I did a video, and if you want to look at it, I shot a 360-degree video of the final drive down the viaduct, and it's on pauldorpat.com. So if you go, you can find, and if you click on it, you can circle around during the drive and see the entire viaduct from the tunnel all the way down to the
Figure out how to do that. You can actually circle around while you're driving.
You can circle around in the video as you're watching the video. You need to use your mouse.
Just use a leisure mouse.
Use your
never told me
mouse.
about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, in any case, you can follow that, and in the video, there's
How many
actually
of you have leisure mouses?
leisure.
Raise your hands if you have a leisure mouse.
What is a leisure mouse?
Isn't that what you said?
No, use your mouse.
Oh, I can do that.
No. So this is a classic shot of Seattle in long lost era. This is 1950s. Where could this be? Well, if you've been watching Paul's column, you might know. Any guesses?
Freeway.
All right, who said that? Raise your hand. Well, you would ordinarily get a prize for that, but we don't have one. So yes, you're right. What's that?
He'll take your hat.
No, you can't have my hat. No, you can't have my hat.
Was that picture by
Making them around.
Werner Lagenhager?
It's Werner
You
Lincoln.
got it.
That's
Who
right.
said that? How do you know that?
Well, I have seen a lot of those pictures in your
Before,
column
in front
and,
of the screw.
and in the library, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, you did explore for your neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't live far from here. He just
Really?
lived up he didn't live far from this at all. He just lived that way a little bit. Yeah.
Well, he took some pictures of the homes that were being demolished by WashDOT to make room for the freeway. Yeah.
So here we are looking down. This is about Third and Union. And these are, if you were a Seattleite from 1908 to 1958, you might say meet at the steps. And you would meet, well, not quite 08. The street was lowered and the steps were added. But this is the building which has been there. On this location, it's always been a federal building, the post office. And we'd meet at the steps, and it had that marvelous interim median strip between public and private, which all too often we seem to lose. But those steps were subject, they were Chuckanut sandstone, and they were subject to staining by pigeon poop. So by 1958, the powers that be decided there's only one thing for it. Let's take it down and replace it with something that will never be stained by pigeon poop. And they did. So there are no steps there any longer, but we do have a rather, what some have called a filing cabinet sitting on its side. But there's Benaroya across the street, which is kind of lovely. Hooverville, mid-30s, down on Port of Seattle land. This is about 250 of 500 shacks on that plot, taken from the B.F. Goodrich building in the mid-30s. And I went back down there and found Port of Seattle gave me a lift and pushed me up into the air because the B.F. Goodrich building no longer exists. And there we are today.
So we can just rename that as tiny houses of the past? Or?
Yes.
Tiny house living.
What was that?
Tiny house living nowadays.
Yeah, tiny house, right. They actually design houses out of containers. Yeah, they build houses for people out of containers, yeah.
Those are pretty large, though. These containers.
Bigger small houses, bigger tiny houses, yeah.
Here we're at the corner of 34th and Fremont.
What is that sometimes called, this intersection? Center of the universe. Remember that? Okay.
Here's the Fremont Baptist Church up here. This is in 1941, and I think this is one of the last trolleys to ply Seattle streets. They'd already gotten rid of all the streetcars that ran on rails downtown. They'd already been replaced by trackless trolleys and rubber-tired buses. But this is one of the last trolleys that went up to Phinney Ridge, and taken by one of the streetcar operators themselves. And so he was commemorating this at 34th and Fremont Avenue. We had to find something significant to commemorate the trolley, so I went back about 1.5 years ago.
That's what I thought.
And of course, the trolley's been replaced by 2 women walking abreast. Sorry.
Reminds me of my visit to the Smith Tower, actually.
Here we are at the Gohing Festival in China in 1921. It was about a 4-day festival. And I think these fellows, in your original column, you stated these guys were members of a chess club. But also, behind them, there's a wonderful, they're carrying a gorgeous dragon. There's the Hotel Milwaukee. I went down just last year to repeat this. We'd already done it in the column in 2013. But I went back to get a new repeat, and I found the Seattle Kungfu Society, just a couple doors down. And they all trooped out on the street and joined me for a photo in that, pretty close to the same spot. And here they are. This is Sifu Zhang Liang, who's 80 years old this year, and is a remarkable specimen. put it that
Way
way.
disappointing. Very disappointing, really.
Because you can't do Kung Fu.
Well, I turned 82, but look at me, I'm a wreck. And he can do Kung Fu, I mean, that's disappointing.
Well, he brought all his lion dancers out onto the street, and I was a little concerned about shutting down King for 15 minutes, except this guy's a West Seattle cop, and he said, no problem. About 15 minutes to get them all, because they have to assemble all these poles and flags. And, so,
Decent.
here we are down.
Where is this? You
Where is
guys?
this?
Does anybody want to speculate?
Not the cut, on this end,
Black River?
Black River.
Who said that? Didn't you already win didn't you do that? Oh, wait, I see you guys.
They're
You
collaborating.
didn't conspire, did you guys? We can take this corner and we'll win the day. Yeah, that's the Black River, right? And Gene will explain it.
Well, this is 1906, and the Post-Intelligencer had an outing. Was it Post-Intelligencer or the Times?
PI, I think, yeah.
I think it was. They had an outing, and they were trying to canoe down from the bottom of Lake Washington all the way out to the saltwater. And the Black River actually eventually led that in that direction. I don't think they made it, but
It didn't.
the Black River, within 3 years, the Black River disappeared. And here it is today. That is Carl of the Brown Bear Car Wash. It is really Carl, yeah. So the Black River disappeared because we lowered Lake Washington by 9 feet to match Lake Union, and then to take it out through the locks and give boats access from Lake Washington all the way out to the Sound.
what year?
1909,
What are you talking about?
where they lowered Lake Washington to the level of Lake
It was
Union.
1908-9. Yeah.
And where is this? What city?
This is Renton,
What is Renton?
South Rainier. So the Black River was a,
You know, wait a second. It's getting startlingly difficult for me to remember things in my doting, and when they lowered the lake, it was for the building of the canal, which was completed in 1916. So that dates from 1913. Yeah. So all these things like steel traps at one time, you know, boom, 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 boom. I don't anymore, boy, I'll tell you that. This is fading. Somebody will please take over. Gene.
here's Lake Union, looking on the western shore. And these are the Brown kids. He became a Seattle cop. This was on the cover of Paul's very first Seattle Now and Then book.
Those kids are very good to me. I really supplied me with my wherewithal for more than a year. Yeah. And eventually we did 2 more of them. So this book that Gene put together with the help of Mr. Eels here and others is the 4th of these books. How many of you have either the 1, 2, or 3?
I have all 3.
Quite a few of you have it, okay.
The one thing we did with this book was to choose 100 subjects spanning 82 to this last summer. So it kind of is it's the compendium, the historic 100.
And he could repeat ones that were in the first 3, which then he would repeat with his good camera and the color and all that, And
Well, the third of your first 3, they were so popular, the third one was actually 1989. So we haven't had another version of this for more than 30 years at this point.
I got wore out.
Is that Capitol Hill in the background then?
That is Capitol Hill in the background. And here we look at it today. Another thing that happened with Lake
Where's
Union.
the hill? You say here we see it again.
Well, you didn't look fast enough.
All right. Let me look fast this time.
Okay, Capitol Hill,
Yeah.
and it's gone.
Oh, you mean where it is today as it's gone? Yeah. It's still there, Gene, I'm sorry. There's still a Capitol Hill there.
You know, I could arguably say that when you're playing peekaboo with a year-old child, they don't know when you disappeared or not. As far as I know, I'm a creature of the moment.
Yeah, it sounds
Capitol
like-
Hill no longer exists in this photo.
Could you go back to it once more?
Where's this one taken?
So is that Fairview Avenue trestle?
That's very good. Now, you're really a smart guy. That's very good. That is the Fairview Trestle, yeah.
Well, because, you know, there is, and we've talked with you about this many times, every time you come here,
Yeah.
there is a trestle-like structure, which
Yeah.
is right outside here, about 300 feet that
Yes,
way,
right.
next to the credit union.
Yes, that's right.
And is that possible one of the pieces of that trestle?
No, it isn't.
No.
This is the southwest corner. That's, where we are right now is the southeast corner. That's the southwest corner. But everything between where the photographer is and where the trestle is was filled in 1917, I think. Yeah, 1917. Again, so I'm really slipping. But we have a story about that, not in the tape, but in the book, one of the books, or one of the tapes or something.
So now we're about to go. This is a jumping off point. I promised Eastlake. Well, these kids are my neighbor kids, but they don't live in Eastlake, so we're just going to ignore them. I did go back to this spot. This was taken for our 2011 Mohi show, in which we took over Mohi before they moved. This is Tia and Liana Owen, but I went back earlier last year and got one more photograph of them, 6 years after the original. And now Tia on the left can drive, which is terrifying.
Tigers are big.
So there we go.
There's your,
That's what we're talking about.
that is Westlake there.
So we're going to do a little duck out of the
Eastlake,
book.
that's Eastlake and whatever else it is.
We're going to duck out of the
Fairview,
book
that's
and
more
head
like
for
Fairview, actually.
and head over, and we'll spend a few slides looking at Eastlake subjects now.
So Eastlake is at the bottom left, right? Right down there in the bottom left, yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. Not far from where we are. No, oh no, we could shout at each other here. Okay, well, we're a little farther north, yeah.
What was the trestle used for?
Well, it was used for wheeled vehicles,
It wasn't.
wagons and cars and the like. you know.
Oh, it's not rail?
No, the rails were running along Eastlake, and then they came up into the neighborhood and continued on to the bridge, the Latona Bridge. So I don't think that was for cars and buses and.
So where the camera is in this picture is probably freeway now.
Yes, I think you're right. You're right on the freeway in it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's very good. You guys are really quite impressive. Well, some of you are actually. Some of you are those. Where's this, guys? Hmm? What is this?
It's the map of the lake.
Speak up.
Lake Union, map of the lake.
I'm hard of hearing.
Lake Union map of the lake.
That's the Lake Union map of the lake, yeah, and that's from the federal surveys of the 1850s.
So this is like 1855.
Yeah.
But it's not connected. That's it.
No connection
That's all
yet.
there was.
What's that?
So that's all there was. Nothing's.
No, well, you've got probably a wagon road there in the lower left, right? And then you've got paths up there, Indian trails up on top.
Oh, there you go.
Right, you know, that's up,
And those are the those are the two creeks. The bottom.
They
over
got
the right
creeks,
and
yeah,
the bottom
right,
left.
a lot of
I see
creeks.
them now. They're going in and out. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's a good shot. That's a good.
they went around and did surveying with a chain, which ran, 66 links or something. These are all things I've forgotten. You know?
Paul, is there any evidence of habitation, Indian habitation, that preceded the settlers
Oh, yeah.
here in our
Lots of
neighborhood?
places.
Oh, wow.
Well, you need to talk to somebody who's better at that, much better than I, but I would think so, because there was a lot of reason to be down here at the south end lake. You had the water, you had easy approaches to the bay, you had the fowl that flew in from Elliott Bay to to the lowlands, you know, which were set between Denny and Queen Anne Park. So I would think so. But I would get David Berge's book on the history of Chief Seattle, which is out, was it last year?
Yep.
And he'll have a lot of that geography in there and tell you what was where. And if he doesn't, shame on him. No, he's an excellent writer, and I, truthfully, as you can tell, I haven't read it yet. I've been reading comic books.
What year do you
You
think?
know
No,
the
I haven't
origin
been doing that.
of
What?
the name Union, Lake Union?
What's that?
You know the origin of the name Lake Union? Why did they name it Union?
Yeah, I do, and let's test Clay Eels and see how he does on that. What's the origin of the lake?
I have no idea, Paul.
Well, you used to know that, didn't you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, one of the pioneers who lived in the neighborhood, Mercer, yeah, he suggested that there would someday be a canal or whatever, maybe different devices that would join the big lake with the small lake and the bay. And so he said, let's call it Union. So they had the organizers of a July 1st celebration when their very early settlement, I think it was in '54, they agreed on it. They'd call it Lake Union. And it did have a native name, which of course got swallowed up right away in local history. I don't know the name of it.
What year is this drawing, do you think?
What's that?
What year do you think this drawing is?
55. They were stopped from finishing it because of the battle with the natives, the war, the Indian War, which the Indians don't call it the Indian War, they call it the War of the Settlers. Well,
Oh, wow.
We've got about,
we're going to put a few local ones, and they have to figure out where it is, don't they? And this is when probably they serve the coffee and donuts, isn't it?
yeah, well, right now, we're at 1511 Eastlake, so we get a hint here.
That's a pretty good hint. Do you recognize this building, guys?
We're at 1551.
1551.
All right, that building's no longer there, but I think I remember it. Any of you remember that? Okay, let's move on, and it's a loser. What about this one? This is right up the hill from it, it's attached to it. Okay,
No, these are very special. I haven't seen these, and that whole area is of great reverence for a
I
number of
assure
us.
you, I have not been hiding them from you. I just bumped into them last night, and Gene ordered me to send on a few fresh faces. And I said, we're getting old to these people, send on freshness. So these are two of them, but we'll get you the copies.
Are these the WPA pictures?
Yes, they are WPA pictures. You're right, they're tax photos, yeah.
I'm amazed at the satellite dish up there on
Yeah. I'm joking, that was a joke.
What is that dish? No, that's just lines of electricity, huh?
It's across from where the
Now,
Fred
this
had.
is a test for you. Where's this, you guys?
Franklin Avenue East.
What's that?
Franklin Avenue East.
Right over here. Right. When I first saw those stairways, I just marveled at it. And I also felt a little threatened. I didn't want to climb that thing. Look at that little ball at the basement. Then you have to climb up those steep steps. You know of anybody that's lived there? Anybody? Anything about
I know
its
the
use?
people who do live there deliver the newsletter for us.
Oh, yeah?
And there is a neighborhood legend that was once a house of ill repute.
Yeah.
Do you have any direct knowledge of that?
No, my thought is that having done this residential history stuff and local history for a long time, I rarely ever believe any claim like that because it's so commonplace, unless there was a whole lot of more whoring than we ever appreciated. But I don't think so. I think that's just a sensational conclusion, yes.
But then Paul was brought up Lutheran.
What's that?
You really have to want to patronize.
You'd really
the
have to
house.
want
All
it, you
those
got it.
stairs.
Yeah. They only have vigorous clients, yeah. Very good. Maybe I'll take my idea back on that, huh? Yeah.
I had a quick question, that style of the concrete with the ball.
Yeah.
I have a very vivid memory of a house in Finney Ridge with that in my childhood, but you don't see that anymore. They've been removed, or that style of concrete.
So you mean a ball sitting on a
Yeah,
on a
this right in the
platform?
post.
Yeah, I don't know how to
You see
explain
it
that.
around? Is it very common? Back in those days?
No.
Huh. Just caught my eye, like, wait.
I'm
Thanks.
stupid in so many ways, you know, that's one of them. What's this, you guys?
Latona School?
School.
No, it's not Latona.
Oh,
The whole neighborhood is named for it.
Roanoke.
Huh?
Roanoke?
I can't hear.
Roanoke?
No, not Roanoke. Whole neighborhood. And it keeps the two. I lived in, here, I can show you where I lived. Do you have a flashlight? I'll show you where I lived.
Press that little button at the top.
I lived, oh boy.
Not at the very top. There you go.
I lived in this building right there.
wow.
And then there's a playfield right here that's hidden behind this. And I'll give you one more hint. This is on the way up Capitol Hill. So we're walking now about where the freeway begins, right
Now,
here.
where you lived isn't now a pea patch?
Yeah, this is a pea patch now.
Lowell School?
What's that?
Lowell School? Or-
No, this is a whole neighborhood right here. This entire neighborhood is named after that school.
Think
And it's-
sporting goods.
What?
Sporting goods,
Why did you say that?
because it's right across the street from our guy.
That was a good clue, but we're not gonna give you any more. Now that is kind of badly named because the name that it's for, that is the topographic name that it's for, you can't see it from there.
Cascade neighborhood.
You got it, that's
Just
the
know somebody else
Cascade
said it.
neighborhood.
Now I know what they're talking about. Very
Yeah.
small section.
What's that?
By REI, a very small neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right. We had the Artists League there. Every Sunday, we would, you know, we'd get there and do baseball together, softball. A lot of fun. God, we had a good time. It was just wonderful.
What part of the corner is it in Cascade by the Peacock?
Just right here. Okay, can I have that again so I can think it up while I'm pretending to find it? Where is it? Which one I do? All right.
And then there Thomas
So,
and
hold on.
Hodges.
Give me time to think. Where are we here? Oh, it's right. What did I point to earlier?
Over the
A little
right.
further to the
Over
right.
the right.
Right. To the right, more.
Are there three of them here?
Yeah.
I better sit up.
It's these three.
I gotta sit up.
You mean these three right here, right? The threesome?
Yeah, he pointed at those originally.
That's it, yes.
And on the field to the
Right.
right.
That's where the pea patch is right now.
That's right. So you're looking down on the other side of that, one block away from there, right here. This is Fairview right here.
Cascade School.
Okay? Seattle Times used to be right here.
Yep.
So
What year is this picture?
I got out of it. I didn't have to come up with a name. Isn't that clever of me? What year was the picture?
Yes,
Don't know.
because if that's where, I think it is around Thomas and Pontius, that's where Emmanuel Lutheran is. Would you-
Thomas is exactly the right name of that street given here.
Okay, so Thomas and Pontius is the corner.
Pontius
kitty
is too
corner
far
from the
this way, one
Peacock,
block.
And that's where Emmanuel Lutheran sits right now,
Yeah,
and it's
Pontius.
110 years old.
And I tried, I have applied for the job to be the custodian there.
Well, you can come back and apply again, we'll take you.
They take me?
Sure.
They said I was overqualified.
They hadn't seen your basement.
Well, they would have really, well, there was good reason for that.
So
Thanks
the
a lot,
school
Judy.
was where the church is now? That can't,
What's that?
can't be.
Say it again.
I'm trying to figure out where the school is in relationship to where the church
Well, we'll
is.
go where the church was. Okay, are those the three?
The church still is there, it's
Those are the three.
115 years old.
Church is right across the street from this. Right here is where the church is, right here. Okay. I, where are those three again? Are these them?
Yeah, right in there.
Okay. We understand each other now?
I can't figure out
Is anybody going to complain, or?
Well,
Correct?
please help us situate ourselves. Are we looking over at Lake Washington, or is that Elliott Bay?
That's a very good question. We're looking west.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we're looking west from where the hill rises up. So that we're standing on the freeway. See, we're
Looking
standing on
west.
the freeway looking west.
Here's
And you know where the school was, don't you?
Not very.
Okay.
When was it removed?
It was the 1949 earthquake damaged it so badly that they had to pull the kids out and they never used it again. And so then that became the site of a place that was all about gardens and flowers and stuff, where the school was. It was taken over as a warehouse for florists. I think I'm right about that. And then most importantly, of course, was that we could play softball across the street. It's wonderful.
So REI would be right.
Right, or the lift, yeah.
Right over
that's
here.
Right up on the border of what we're looking at. Yeah. And Pemco would be right down there, in there too, right?
Over here.
Well, no, Pemco is to the left of that.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, what's the address of Pemco? Is it Thomas or what? Huh?
Thomas and Pontius is the corner of where Emmanuel Lutheran is. Across the street is the burger shop. I can't think of what it's called.
Yeah. Yeah, we know that the Lutherans are there.
Right.
And we'll always be thankful for that. But what is the, what's the name of the street where, you know, the REI is on? That's 1 block away, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the name of it? John. Huh? John?
No, John goes parallel with Pontius and, I mean with Thomas and REI sits in between the two of them. No, it's not.
Then we'll go for that.
Stewart
Okay,
exit.
we'll accept that.
But basically, we know where we are here.
Fairview go, or Fairview. Eastlake goes.
I used to know this stuff so well. Will you believe me if I tell you I used to know this?
Yes.
I used to know it, okay, thank you. That's beautiful, okay. Here's something that confuses me. I was looking at this last night. I couldn't figure out what this was. Look at this swirl here, this elevated area right here with a couple of curves in it. I don't know, have any idea. But because we know where a lot of roads are, we could figure out if we took the time up. And we could actually, we could take nominations for people in this group who would research it. Does anybody would like to nominate anybody else in this group to do the research? What's that?
Are they regrading that area? Is that part of the Denny Hill area?
They're regrading it for sure, but I don't know. It's not for the Denny regrade. So I don't know what it's about. I just don't know. I'll try to research it for next year, okay?
Okay.
I don't know that I'll survive that long, but I hope so. It could give me something to live for.
Yeah.
Is that too far down to be Seattle Center?
No, that's
Seattle Center is,
Is more in the valley.
Seattle Center is quite a ways away.
Okay.
right, but it's not,
He'll try to rescue this, watch him. Okay, what was that, Gene?
I'm pointing over where Seattle Center is at the base
Well,
of
that's
Queen Anne
good,
right
yeah,
here.
that's good.
Fields.
I beg your pardon.
I thought it would be over
So.
before that.
Clay's been very silent today, hasn't he?
Would you guess 1900 maybe?
Okay.
Well, I used to know the church dates
She
because.
said 110 years old.
What, how, 110 is
It's
it?
110 or 115, one or the other, I can't quite
So this
remember.
could be
110 or 15. Huh?
1905 or
Yeah,
1910.
I wrote an essay about it in the Now and Then, years and years ago. And then a friend of mine was a preacher. He was just fresh out of school.
Nair Ernest?
No, he was fresh out of school.
There's so little on.
Anderson's. Became a librarian and an archivist.
Well, shall we all take a little nap?
All right, I'm for that.
Moving right along.
Now, did we look at all the pictures?
No, we've still got some.
What is this, guys?
Republican steps.
Very good. All right, raise your hand, please. All right, let's give an applause to that. But except we might retract it. Where are we looking? Where is the Republican steps here?
That's on Republican right above I-5, or that might have been the part that got wiped out by
This is gone today.
There's still a little piece of it left.
Yeah, the top part is still there, you're right. But this looks up from what street?
Eastlake.
Huh? Come on, you can risk it. You may be wrong, but you won't be shameful. We're not gonna laugh at you.
The guy who said Eastlake Avenue, I think.
He
was
said
right.
Eastlake?
Yeah, he did.
Well, then you get it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Shame is on me for not hearing. Well, of course, I can't hear, so I'm not too ashamed. All right, where's this, you guys?
That's
Probably the corner of Harvard and Eastlake Avenues.
Yeah.
You're right on. You're right
Sorry.
on.
That's
Yeah,
Harvard and
Mary Lou was
Eastlake, yeah.
missing.
That's where you go up the hill on Harvard, and this is where you don't go up the hill on Eastlake.
Right
And
where
then
your
this,
office was.
and what was across, there it is later, after the freeway is built over that same section. And then across the street, with all those posters on that building, what was in that building? You have any idea?
The Helix.
You're right, that was the Helix, yeah. That's where I worked for 2.5 years. Yeah.
Would you mind going back to
Anybody
the?
that does know that knows what the Helix is? 1, 2, 3 of you. Well, 4 or 5. That's not bad. It was the first what they call underground newspaper in Seattle, and it came out weekly and started in early '67. And it continued to 70. Huh?
Seagull sit.
Speak up.
Seagull sit.
Do you understand that?
Its logo was a copy of the UW's logo.
Yeah.
It says Lux sit. And it said Seagull sit.
Who said that? Where'd you get that information?
I was there.
I started it. I was the editor. I don't remember anything about that. Sorry, I went on that one. But you could be right because it wasn't there permanently. It might have been used in a certain one time or two times, huh? You saw it really there for a long time?
Maybe I'm getting the Helix mixed up with another underground newspaper. That was
What other town were you in? What other town were you in?
I was in Seattle.
Okay.
It was during the Vietnam War.
Yeah. Well, there were other ones, but later. Yeah.
Okay.
Would you be willing to go back to the previous picture? Yeah. So that was.
I'd rather talk about the Helix, but I guess we could go back. Yeah.
We should. But this, did you ever shop at this drugstore?
Never did. Did you?
No.
Yeah.
But I understand it was like an ice cream parlor and.
Could be.
Yeah.
I think we have another shot of it somewhere, but I may be wrong about that. We should be more conscientious of your needs, and when we see strange things like this, we should make scans of them and send them on to you.
We'd love to get that one for our newsletter.
Yeah, well, send us again all the information on a what do you call those things? Email. Send us an email, and we'll whenever we see anything, I'll write a little note up with the other notes,
Great.
which I bump into and I spray with wet food from the kitchen. But we'll look up there occasionally and see it and say, oh, we should send that on.
Thank you.
Some of it you'll get.
Thank you.
We'll finish off Eastlake with a couple of comparisons that actually were in the column in the last 5 years or so. This one.
Yeah. I love this thing. This building I love. And it's one of those WPA tax photos. And I did a lot of research on it, so I was able to find who lived there and who didn't live there, which was everybody else. And then also find information on these buildings on the right and left. The one on the left is still there. It's the brick apartment house at East, what? Oh yeah, there it is.
The Jensen block. Yeah.
What's that?
The Jensen block apartments.
Yeah. So that little thing, that charming little thing we saw, was right down in that hole. And there was a second one below it. There was two of them. And they got rid of one of them. But let's go back and look at that. Let's just savor that for. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
Do you like it?
It's a beautiful door.
Does anybody want to speak against it, please? Somebody speak against it.
You know, I think this was handmade, hand carved out of a single stump.
I'd like that.
Well, over the years, Paul, I've just been so inspired because you have seen so much evidence of destruction of wonderful old buildings, and you seem to have come to some sort of peace about that.
Yeah.
You obviously see what was lost, but you know that it just happens, especially in Seattle.
Yeah. Why especially in Seattle?
Well, it just seems like Seattle is not very respectful of its past.
Yeah, we're not as good as
Without,
I have no idea how it would compete with other. How would you know that? You'd have to take tremendous research to figure that one out.
Yeah.
You'd have to do citywide inventories and question-answer things. It's very hard to make generalizations like that. I just skip it.
We're too close in. The hourglass problem we have has made it so that everything has to be replaced so close. That's my guess. Where Portland was spread out so they could enjoy places they kept. So they have way more, somebody else quote me on this, way more 1900 houses than we do. That I know of around Portland. They're still there. A lot of old Victorians are all around. Ours are gone because we needed that space. We needed freeway stuff. That's my picking up on it.
Good point. Yeah.
But there's nowhere near as many.
What's that say on your shoulder?
Oh, it's a car place.
Huh?
A car guy.
A car what?
Car guy.
AAA.
Oh, that too.
AAA. You learned that in AAA school?
No, I'm just an old Seattle.
What's his name?
Okay.
He hasn't said yet.
You guys know what this is, don't you? It's not Eastlake, but
Fremont looking east?
it is the lake, though. It is Lake Union.
Fremont looking east?
The log runs.
You're right on. You're at Fremont looking east, yes. But what's happened?
Is it destruction of some kind? Is there destruction?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a break in the dam right here at Fremont, lowered the lake 7 feet. So this is the lake lowered from that break. And they had to rebuild it. And the, I don't know if we put it in here, but did we? Oh, we'll see the results.
That's today, same spot. But here is the result.
Yeah. And that's Eastlake there on the other side, and that's the hill that goes up to Capitol Hill. What a mess, huh? Okay.
You know, this might even be the houseboats that were just north of Lake Union Dry Dock. There was a community of houseboats there until the 60s. I don't know if this is it, but we always try to remember them because there are some shrubs. It's just a few feet from here. There's some shrubs like roses and hawthorns that are still there because the people who lived in houseboats had planted them on the shore.
Well, there's enough evidence there that one can figure out pretty easily where this is. I just haven't done it yet. And probably never will, because as you can see, I'm failing.
Well, there's a church on top, right?
What's that?
Isn't that church on top of the hill?
Probably a church, yeah.
Oh, way up there.
Can you tell if it's Lutheran or not?
Big house.
I used to be a Lutheran, by the way.
So we're going to now jump away from Eastlake. We're actually not too far away, but we're at the locks right now. And this is the Kalakala in 1948. We're back in the book now. And all of these folks lined on the decks, this is an excursion, and peering out the windows. And I want you to pay attention to the wheelhouse, because we'll come back in just a moment to the wheelhouse. I had to find a ship to match the Kalakala, which was difficult to do. Didn't quite achieve it, but the Kalakala was built in '35. It ran for till the mid-'60s, and Clay Eels is now going to do his imitation of the ship itself.
We've been mentioning Clay several times. And here comes Clay's actual, he's going to do what?
How many of you rode the Kalakala? I did as well, about 1 month before it ended. And those of you who did ride it, you will remember its sound, which was unique because you felt like the boat was going to fall apart. It was wah, 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 wah.
That's it.
Thank you.
It's a shame it wasn't called the Walla Walla.
Very good.
So I went back in early 2017 when I heard that there was a boat that had been repaired in Lake Union, and it was the USS Turner Joy. It's a museum ship in Bremerton, and this is about 7 in the morning on February 20th or something. And I went back and found this, and only after I took the photo did I come to understand that Turner Joy was involved in a significant moment in U.S. history. It was one of the 2 vessels in the Gulf of Tonkin, USS Maddox and the Turner Joy. And so, for those of you who have forgotten or didn't know, the Gulf of Tonkin was, there was a resolution pushed by Johnson, President Johnson, to get us into the Vietnam conflict, the war, because the USS Maddox and the Turner Joy were ostensibly attacked by North Vietnamese gunboats. And there's some question as to the veracity of that. And so we were brought into a war with fervor and passion, but most likely.
I could see you question it. I always thought it was sort of proven that it was a lie.
Well, there were 2 attacks, and one was on August 4th and one was on August, the fake one, the one that we don't believe was August 6th. The August 4th one, there was some sort of skirmish, but it was the second attack that led Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin resolution.
So the second one that was the lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
History.
And here's the Turner Joy out in the middle of close to Vietnam.
Look at this.
And I wanted you to look at because there's very little that remains of the Kalakala. And Clay Eels, the editor of the book, went out and took this photo off, just off the leeward of Salties in West Seattle. And he took a shot. This is the wheelhouse, and here it is looking across to Seattle. Nice job, Clay.
When did they bring that back, or how'd that get here?
It's a very long and tragic and involved story, but essentially the Kalakala was subject to a series of battles and possessions, and taken up to Alaska as a fish processor, and then brought back down, and there was an aborted mission to save it, and finally nothing is left but this little bit of wheelhouse, and I think a drivetrain too.
Right, it was the very day, the last day before the thing was totally demolished in Tacoma, that Jerry King, the owner of Salties, went down and salvaged these pieces. And they're just out in the parking lot. You can go and see them anytime you want. You know, it's sad, but at least you can touch a bit of the Kalakala.
Well, there's no one that can tell me that Seattle fails to preserve its history. When we destroyed the Kalakala, we destroyed the Wawona, you know, which San Francisco refurbished its companion to the Wawona.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know.
I'm moving out. I can't put up with that anymore. Now, why is that though? Why do we fail to get the rich people to take some interest in these artifacts? I don't know. We certainly have the wealth here. Didn't have it as much then as we do now. We didn't have the wealth of San Francisco though. Nor did we have really, although a lot of people would debate this, but I just didn't think it had the maritime kind of coterie, you know, the entourage, maritime history that they do in the Bay. But I don't know, that's maybe
The wealth
wrong,
came
too.
along a little too late, maybe.
Yeah.
Hard to have the appreciation, even though you'd think Paul Allen or somebody would have grabbed the clock a long time ago.
That could be a good point, because it maybe everybody waits for the obvious saviors to act like saviors, and they fail to do it. So blame Paul Allen.
He's done
And he won't mind it at all.
He's left us a lot of cool stuff.
So here we are, and this is a day or two before the opening of the viaduct, which was April 4th, 1953. So this is, what, maybe the first or the second? And this photo was taken by a wonderful photographer, Howard Sykes, who actually on this day walked up and down the viaduct and took a slew of photos. And when, on February 2nd or 3rd, I'm determined to go down and repeat all of Howard's photos looking back at the city. But I did get this one from a car.
I hate to disappoint you, but it's possible that Sykes did not take those photographs. It might be a guy named Bradley. They were friends, and I got all of their what do you call these things, slides at the same time
You may be
from a
confused.
third person.
Oh.
It's possible. I will stick with Sykes,
Okay.
and you can go ahead.
Well, Paul's been crediting Sykes in every column and every book,
Well,
but
see, there he goes.
only tonight do you know the truth. It may not be Sykes at all. This is the first time I've heard of that. Oh, boy. He wanted to tell you.
But we don't know. We don't know. In fact, I would still stay with Sykes.
Okay.
So we're back to Sykes. Forget everything that just transpired between us.
You use it as
Keep the ambiguity. Hold on to that ambiguity.
No, we'd
It's
rather
pretty
have
cool
the
you got a
truth.
red car instead of the two gals in the red coats.
Yes.
Red car, red coats. Yeah, that was it. Well, I can't, well, look at the picture.
No, what is the point, though?
Red car, red coats. It's
That's
color.
very nice. You got this red
Yeah.
car there. Isn't that clever? Didn't he do that? Let's make him feel better now.
So here we go. This actually has already disappeared. You can't, there's a building on the right which completely occludes the possibility of retaking this. Even if we could get on the viaduct today, we wouldn't be able to see this
It's
view.
awfully narrow here for some reason.
Here's something interesting though, and I'm going to point this out, is this structure, which is the F5 building. And it was called the Mark, and this was spring of 2017 that I took this photo. The building was commissioned by a local developer, and I've forgotten his name, I'm getting too old now. Oh, Eric, maybe Eric Johnson. Anyway, he commissioned a firm to create a structure that reflected attributes of his favorite actress. Let's take a look. This was just taken a few weeks ago, looking down. And there's the Methodist dome down below it. And
It's Fifth Avenue.
it's on Fifth Avenue. And we actually like this building. Paul and Clay and I.
Oh, we love it. We love this building. It reminds us of a certain actress. And who is that actress?
Well, let's take a look. And while they were building the Mark, or now the F5 building, they actually had a giant portrait of Hepburn in the lobby for the workmen to pass by to inspire them. And so, but take a look. Her hips and her cigarette holder and her shoulders.
It's all there.
And this was the photo that he actually from the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's, which Eric Johnson adored, and adored Hepburn and said, I want the grace, the savoir-faire, and just the beauty of Hepburn
Did you notice
in
I
a building.
remembered the name of the architect there?
Well, I know I made it up. I think it's Eric Johnson.
Okay.
Well, now,
Honest guy, honest guy.
of course,
What is it?
this is the
Oh, let's sing
theme
it.
song. Oh, will you lead us in song,
Oh,
Paul?
I can't get that high, I don't think. Anybody sing here? You do it? Come on up here, would you? Are you a singer? Way in the back row. Is there anybody here that's not too shy that they could come up and lead us sing this thing?
Just start in, Paul. We'll
Start
just
in.
go for it.
I'm not gonna be way too long. Moon River. Okay, how's that?
Moon River, wider than a mile, I'm crossing with style someday. Oh, dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. We're after seeing rainbows and waiting round the bend. My huckleberry friend, Moon River and me. Now, we've done this before, as you can tell, because we do it so well. I just thought that it was the huckleberry. I thought was really silly. I thought that is sentimental, silly. But then somebody pointed out that this song, well, what is it, Gene?
No, it's Huckleberry Finn.
Huckleberry Finn, yeah.
Two drifters.
Two drifters, right?
Jim and Huck.
Jim and Huck, okay.
Oh, it's got a little bit of American classic history there.
Okay, we're just approaching the end here, and so I'm going to flip through these so we can get home before bedtime. We don't want to get home after bedtime.
Oh, boy.
This is Green Lake, and this is an Ashel Curtis photo taken in 1903, and today, again, the freeway intrudes. You don't get much of the lake, you don't get much of the surrounding scenery. All you can see, however, is these, you can see the Olympics up there. So one more time, there they are, and there they remain.
Clever, very nice. Okay. All right.
And we're going to jump to some of the highlights. All these are in
All
the
right,
book.
guys, anybody know what this is besides, wait, this guy knows right here, he can't enter this. Clay knows it. What is that? That is, Gene?
This is the oldest house, the oldest structure in Seattle today, extant. Still standing.
Doesn't look like this, but it's not that far off. It was the,
Well, this was the house built by Doc Maynard when he moved from his holdings near Pioneer Square and left the others behind and traded them for several hundred acres in West Seattle and started a farm with his second wife, Catherine. And the two of them, their first house burned down, so this was the replacement for that house. And in the late 60s, it was sold to a family who, the members of which you see now, and this is taken in the 90s, and the family is quite well known, and Paul was given this photo by one of the members, the descendants of the family.
Ivor Haglund, that's his mother, standing there in the white apron on the steps, and her mother next to her, and her father in the black coat. And so they're out there in the early 90s, 1890s. This is Ivor and Daisy started to court later in this, what do you call those, decades? Decades, yeah. Millennium.
Yeah, in the new millennium,
Century.
yeah. And this is their cousin, Snidely Whiplash. And his son who's peeing on the side of the house. Well, today we go back, and the house has been moved from Alki Avenue about a block inland, and it's still there, and it still has essentially the same shape without the northern wing. And there's Clay Eels standing with the members of his Southwest Seattle Historical Society. And it's unmarked. There's no plaque, there's nothing to tell you the location. So to find that out, you have to get a copy of the book, and we tell you the address.
Don't forget your relatives
in Urbana.
In Peoria, Urbana.
There's a plaque at the very end of the street, but it doesn't give you the exact location. So. Interestingly, Catherine Maynard, the second wife of Doc Maynard, gave Princess Angeline, whose actual name was Kiki Soglu, monikered her Princess Angeline because she was the daughter of Chief Seattle. And last year, now, a year ago, November, Ron Edge and Paul actually triangulated and discovered the location of Princess Angeline's shack below the market, below Western. And here it is. Let's take a look. There's Ron Edge, and this is a block north, half a block north of the Pike Place hill climb, but it's one of the few little green patches. And as Ron looks down, this is the Fixed Door building on the right and Pike Place Garage on the left. And so Ron is now sitting just about on the porch of where Princess Angeline's shack was. And so you can look down, as Clay will tell you, you can look down if you go to the second floor.
Yeah, if you want to see this, you cannot see it from the street view. It's fenced off. But go to the Pike Place Market and go to Lowell's, the restaurant. Go to the second floor, look out the window, and it's directly below you.
What's the best thing on the menu at Lowe's?
The view.
Well, here's the penultimate slide in the show here. And this is Princess Angeline, very famous picture taken in the early 1890s by an unknown photographer. And she's sitting now on what is now Post Alley, just below First, before the market, obviously. And we inset a picture of her dad because we managed to come up with a couple of stand-ins. Here we have on the left Mary Lou Slaughter, who's the great-great-great-great-granddaughter of Kiki Soglu, and Ken Workman, who's the great-great-great-great-grandson of Chief Seattle through his second wife. And they're wearing cedar shawls that Mary Lou created. She's a remarkable basket weaver and worker in cedar, craftsperson. And so this is the end of our program. I'm going to go flip to the very last shot here, which is Clay Eels took a picture of me taking a picture of Ken. And as Ken was standing there, he felt a tap on his elbow. And he turned around a couple times. No, it wasn't like that. No, that hurts. It was a gentle, two-fingered nudge on the elbow. And
try it again.
okay, try it again. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So Ken has come to maybe 5 or 6 of our events, and he tells this story that as I was taking his picture, he thought someone was trying to get past him, and so he kept looking at me and said, "Come on, Gene, move it along, take the picture." And looking around, and later I said, Ken, why were you so eager to get out of there? And he said, well, someone was trying to get through. Then I thought they were trying to pick my pocket. And both Clay and I, who had been watching this entire time, said, well, there was nobody there.
What does it mean? What does that mean?
I don't know, Paul. So I think of that as the nudge of history. And
poet. This guy won a poetry prize when he was 13 years old in New York City.
No, 16. So here we go. So when some of these photos,
Still be writing poetry.
shall we come to the end of the show? I want to go home, Paul. Okay. So
Some of these people are gonna wanna buy books and you gotta stick around.
I know, but we don't need to talk about my 16-year-old poetry. We can talk about it. I brought a copy. In fact, I'm going to read it right now.
Go ahead.
Oh, in any case, it's just, it's been a delight making this book. And here is our back cover with Paul as King of the Universe there, standing up on the glass. So thank you very much for coming.
After Paul started helping us raise money at one of the early ones, we really realized we needed to provide an honorarium. And so again,
Where'd you get the money?
well, I want to get to that. With your inspiration, we've started to ask the people in the neighborhood for a change to donate or to join the community council. We have a website, eastlakeseattle.org, where you can join or donate online. We also accept checks and cash, but basically it's because of people in the past who have provided some memberships and donations that we can afford to provide an honorarium, and that's what we try to do when we have historians here, and these are our favorites. So here they are.
What, $20 a piece?
It's $100 each. Yeah. Wow. I wish it could have been more. Wow. But by the way, I understood that they take credit cards.
You want to pay that, you guys?
They take credit cards, checks, and cash for their book, and are willing to autograph them. And and also we have this room until midnight if necessary. So I'm not joking, but I just you're welcome to go home. But if anybody wants to stay,
can we sleep here?
Yeah, probably. The security officer is in the audience, and he'll make sure that we don't overstay.
He's the guy in charge. So.
Yeah. But in any case, this is just a very important event every year. So here they are.
Okay, well, we're gonna position Paul over here, and I went to the University of Washington, and we have an archival ink pen, so Paul's signature will never fade.
Neither will Gene's.
So
come on down to this end, and you can pay me with cash, credit, or check, and then you can get these guys to inscribe the book for you, however you wish. They make great gifts too, and they can sign it to whoever you wish. They are $49.95 plus $5 sales tax, so $55 total.
See, we usually have this meeting in the school. We're not allowed to sell anything in the school. We're not trying to flog this, but I just want you to know this is a unique opportunity. Normally, they aren't allowed to sell us the book when we have the speaker at the school.